So, gentlemen, how are you?
Good. Very well. How you doing?
I'm not too bad at all. Now, before we get into the album, I like to start in the beginning. Now, you have been childhood friends, you've known each other for quite a while. Is there one memory, perhaps a musical memory, that sticks out from when you were really young?
Oof.
What with each other or just
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? To be honest, I would say the musical memory sort of started a bit later for us, but
Mm.
so teenage years, sort of sharing albums and being like in love with the same music and that kind of thing. I can remember with Matt, our drummer, we were going through a sort of big Smashing Pumpkins phase, and we were obsessed with a song called Mayonnaise. And that's how we sort of bonded over that sort of song. And I specifically remember like him telling me that he loved that song, and there was a bit of a moment of like, okay, I kind of this guy's pretty cool, and that was definitely a moment of connection. Um, yeah. What about you, Rue?
I don't know. I was just thinking. I have a memory of It's a bit later on, but I think you came round to my flat and we had another friend there, and we had quite a drunken, aggressive blues jam. And I was like, I want to play with this guy for a while.
I
That was a
remember that. I remember that. Yeah, we got sort of really drunk, and I thought I could play the
cheeky.
slide. I
Yeah.
tried to play the slide, and I was like, "Man, I can play one song on the slide." And we thought we were like John Lee Hooker and BB King all of a sudden, and the friendship was formed.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting because you say it wasn't until a little bit later that the musical elements started to become a little bit more prominent. So what gave rise to actually trying to be a band or making music together?
I think we've all grown up with music. We've all had parents who just like were always playing lots of old classic music in the car. And we've all played instruments and growing up and played in different bands. And I think as we got older, something sort of brought us together in a very natural sense. And me and Matt one day were like, maybe we should start a band just for fun. And at that same time, like, me and Rue were jamming. We were playing, having these dodgy blues jams, and I was like, I know just the guy. This is the guy, and so it's sort of just out of nowhere. I mean, it was a very natural calling. It just came from nowhere, really, and it started in a very organic, fun way, just to do something in the evenings. Really, that was pretty much it, and like get some beers, go to a studio, and like have fun. And it's crazy because that's what the band has grown from, something that was just totally natural.
What is it about, especially early on the blues, as you started kind of your musical journey? How did the blues kind of bond you together as a group of people?
I think there was quite a big group of us who actually, in our late teens, early 20s, there was a big inspiration for us. And there was this great bar in Soho that everyone just used to go down and hang out, called the Ain't Nothing But Blues Bar. And Leo's brother was in a band that kind of was playing not the blues, but blues influenced type music, and we were all kind of hanging out. And I'd play with them occasionally, and it was just a very big part of our musical upbringing, I think. And I think that's kind of yeah.
Yeah, and
Definitely.
then, oh, go ahead.
No, no, I think that's it. As Rue was saying, it was just like it sort of all started in that sort of. I mean, we all had this love for the blues, and we all shared a studio in Tottenham where all these different blues sort of musicians were living or staying. It was like this sort of squat, and that was where we started. So we were always around these incredible, like, not strictly blues musicians, but they're incredible, like talented musicians who were in blues bands. And so it was always like around, wasn't it, really, Rue? And
Yeah.
like that was our sort of early years of sort of going out watching bands who played sort of bluesy style music and old rock and rolly, like soul-y vibe stuff. And yeah, so it's definitely like bits of that have got into our music, I think.
Yeah, what was that journey like, or that process like, kind of figuring out what you as a group wanted to sound like,
I
especially
think
early on?
yeah, I think to be honest, we had like there were certain things, like certain points and musicians that we loved, and like that we earmarked as like, it wasn't like we thought it through, but like naturally we loved like Jeff Buckley and a band called Woo Life. And then we also loved sort of older stuff like Crosby, Stills and Nash, and more classic stuff. And they were these sort of like markers of like sound. So it was like we knew we wanted it to be something sort of emotional and impactful for people, but also to have this atmosphere and an ambience to the music. So the first thing I did was like, and Rue, I think we did, was we both bought reverb pedals.
Okay.
At the time, we didn't know very much about pedals, really, like at the beginning. And we both went out. I bought a pedal called a Surf Rider reverb pedal, and Rue, I can't remember, what was your pedal, Rue? I can't
Still on my
remember.
board, it's a Holy Grail Nano. Still using it. It's on all the time. I haven't turned it off.
Yeah, and they were the like the things that kind of, this Holy Grail and the Surf Rider were the starting points for the sound, really. And you plug in an electric guitar with those pedals, as obvious as it sounds, and instantly there is this sense of atmosphere and like a ghostliness. And the first rehearsal, I remember doing that, and it just felt right, and it felt like a starting point to make music. And since then, we haven't looked back, but we are trying to get braver with dialing down the reverb sometimes.
I'm very quickly in between, because you mentioned Smashing Pumpkins, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering this correctly, but wasn't one of the first shows you played in support of the Smashing Pumpkins?
Yeah, we did. That was the most ridiculous thing, because we were still like in our infancy, like didn't really know what we were doing. And we got a booker, someone called Claire, and she booked us. She was like, I'm going to get you just get you shows so you can keep getting better. And the second show she got us was supporting James Iha, the guitarist,
Okay.
in Shepherd's Bush in London. And obviously we were like, what the fuck, this is ridiculous. And we turned up to the gig not knowing what we were doing. I remember the sound people, the people at the show were like, you can't have drums on stage because there's no space for James's band. So for some reason, we decided our drummer Matt played a cajon, and we got another friend to play cajon, and did this like really weird version of our music. But it was like a bongo circle or something. But the show was incredible, and it was just like, I think that was one of those early moments of like, wow, this feels like something. This feels something sort of leading us somewhere, and these little moments where we got to meet a hero of ours, like on our second gig, and it was starting to feel special, and people was responding to the music was a bit of a sign, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine it giving a sense of validation, or that you're on the right track at least. And was there a point, perhaps maybe after the first record, where that feeling kind of solidified? Like, okay, now we're onto something. We're doing what we set out to do.
Definitely, I think so. I think, yeah, it definitely does. But to be honest, I mean, I'm interested to hear what Rue's going to say after this, because I think sometimes you can have a sense of like imposter syndrome, and like even now still, like there are moments now, we're playing like big shows now, but like still, even now, I'm building up like confidence in it. And the imposter syndrome went for a long time, and it's still, in some senses, is still going. And I think each album you like chip away at it, and you build up confidence, but it certainly like creeps back in. I can remember like touring the So Long Forever album and still feeling like not that confident, like doubting yourself and all these things. And like, do you know what I mean, Rue? Did you feel that?
Yeah, enormously.
And still feel it, right?
Still absolutely, like, it's, for example, we've written an album that I'm so super proud of, but then The Smile released an album, and you listen to it and you're like, what are we doing? Like, that new record is, to me, one of the best records I've ever heard. And you're still learning, and you're always comparing yourself against other people who are just, amazing and all out there. But at the same time, people come to our shows and really appreciate it. So you've got to also enjoy that and give it back to everyone as well, and say that, yeah, we're happy to be here and show you what we can attempt to do. And you know, it's all constant learning.
Right, but
Definitely.
and I also think, because I've been interviewing musicians for over 10 years now, and this is something I hear more often from either just beginning artists or established artists. I don't think that feeling really goes away. It's if you have some humbleness to you at least. Um, but I don't know how you see it as creatives, but to me, it seemed like there is an inherent vulnerability or an inherent sense of doubt in any creative pursuit.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think it's, you know, I think it's important, and I think it keeps you on your toes, and because if you lose the want to keep learning and keep
Mm,
getting better, like what's the point? You know, your music is going to become limited and stuck. And I think the reason we keep going and you keep trying to write new songs and trying to find this thing is there's this thing you're always chasing that, you know, you'll never quite achieve it, but
yeah.
like you can get sort of close to these moments of feeling like this great sense of pride. But I think the imposter syndrome is almost like a bit of fuel, you know, to like just keep you like moving forward. And the moment you lose that, you're probably becoming some sort of like arrogant diva, you know.
You mentioned that evolution, and I find it very interesting because you mentioned also earlier becoming a little bit braver to turn the reverb down. So if you listen to kind of the new album now and then the music that you've made in the past, how do you see that sonic evolution?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's always kind of evolving in ways that we don't expect, I find actually. Like me and Leo talk a lot and just about, you know, yeah, let's try a really like, you know, acoustic-y record or and just like keep it really pure and simple, no effects, no nothing. And then the next thing you know, we've gone and done something completely different to what we were talking about, but ended up doing something we hadn't thought about doing. And you're like, oh, that's really cool. Let's go that way. And then the idea that you were talking about, you shelve that one, and then you move on. And it's kind of, I don't know, it never feels like our evolution is massively planned,
Okay.
but just kind of seems to go where we feel right at the moment, no matter how many conversations we have beforehand. I think
Yeah,
without
that definitely makes
down it
sense.
too much, if you know what I mean, Lee.
No, I think that's right. I think you just like it's always just following the feeling, you know, and whatever you plan for the new music, it never goes in that direction, really.
Right. But I can't imagine, for instance, if we look at Shoals, that was made in a time in the world where, I mean, everything was kind of upside down and uncertain and everything. Was it then easier in terms of just the production process and the songwriting process with this Ultrasound album that things had a little bit more normalcy around it?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I mean, yeah, it felt very fresh and you know to be around each other. The process with Shoals, as you say, was very different, but also a good test in ways.
Mm.
But with this album, we had this idea to do it in sort of like again, it was a sort of natural thing, but it was over a year, all in the space of a year, written, recorded, everything in 1 year. And it felt like a very sort of like natural way to do it. Like we were in the room together a lot more than usual. There was a lot more jamming than usual and experimenting. And obviously that stuff with Shoals, we just certainly at the beginning we couldn't really do that. And yeah, each album the sort of process takes on a different life and a different
Mm.
strategy. And this one was very much about getting in the room together, making music, like trying different sounds and experimenting, I think.
What do you, I don't know how to really formulate this properly, I suppose, but what did you use kind of as a reference board in terms of what you wanted out of this album, in terms of maybe the sonic direction? Obviously, lyrically was kind of thrust upon you, I suppose, but how do you kind of figure out what directions to go as you go?
I think again, it's just sort of like it is a lot of just feeling, you know, feeling your way, and you hear things when you're playing and you're jamming, and you hear something, and I remember we had moments of hearing different elements of things, like hearing a bit of Massive Attack in some of the music, and like you just follow these little things. But I don't think we necessarily had any sort of like sonic palettes or
Okay.
things to sort of work with. I think it was very much just like following the sort of emotion of what the song might be about, and seeing what kind of happened, trying new instruments and that kind of thing.
Was there a kind of a key song that kicked everything off?
What do you
Yeah,
reckon, Rick?
I think the one that, well, I think I put it down to two actually. I reckon it was All We Ever Wanted and When Everything Was Lost. They both started as very different songs. One was All We Ever Wanted, I think, was going to be quite upbeat and kind of like just like an upbeat indie-ish kind of track, and then When Everything Was Lost sounded quite like a country song, like played on a 12 string, and we just started, the producer Adam just kind of made us play through them loads because we started tracking them. They sounded good, but they weren't right. And then suddenly they just turned into these kind of slower tempoed, powerful, big songs. And I think as soon as we realized that a song could be the same but start life so differently, but still be the same song, was kind of a bit of an eye opener for us, and it kind of broke down a lot of walls of what we thought things could be. And then in Good Night Farewell, the last track as well, that was a whole nother song, but then just one part of it became the entire song. And yeah, we just suddenly learned that you don't have to stick to what originally was there necessarily, or you can just flip it on its head and it can become something completely different.
Are you very open in the creative process, as you mentioned, Rupert, that you can be critical of each other and kind of figure out together which direction to go in?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're still learning that. Like, I think it's kind of like you always, you know, personal experience, like you always try and put the best thing down, but no matter how hard you try, sometimes that can just be the wrong thing, and you have to listen to what people are saying to you and stuff. And I remember Adam helped me a lot, particularly getting guitar parts. Jaffrey, our producer, helped me a lot getting guitar parts on Nightmares and Ice Cream, because I was just really struggling to get the timing and the right imagery right, and he really just kind of helped me focus and get me in a lane where I could start getting good takes that would help the song, you know?
And it is part of this, and this just popped into my head, so I don't know if it's a good question, but is part of it also, I mean, the audiences is growing, the tours are growing. Do you feel that kind of, I don't want to say pressure, but does that at all affect the songwriting process or what you want to convey with the music?
I think it can like seep into your brain, you know, and you can get back of your mind this thing of like sometimes that sort of dangerous question of what do the fans want? What would they want? Like, what do they want to hear? What's the evolution of the last album? But I think you have to just like, there have been times in the past where we've like succumbed to that feeling on an album with like one or two songs where we've been like trying to write a kind of, you know, a more singly song. And we've just realized that's just not our vibe, you know. And I think as soon as you start trying to write for other people, you're losing the essence of like what our band is and what the songs are about, and being true to sort of why we started this. You have to like, I try and always remember what we were doing in the beginning when we were in a rehearsal space and like we weren't even planning to do gigs, you know, like why were we doing it then? And it's trying to remember that feeling of like that what is at the heart of the band, and like not writing for anyone else but ourselves. Really, it's very important to our sound.
Yeah, definitely. We have an expression which I'm pretty sure I'm certain we haven't used it on this record, but it has been used before. And it's normally when we're questioning if a song should be on the record. And we always say it does a job. That's normally a sign that probably shouldn't be on the record.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one other song I want to kind of pick out, which is "Love Is a Precious Thing," especially sonically with more synthy elements and electronic drums. I think. What was the approach with that song? Because I think obviously the concept of love is a very interesting thing to explore, but sonically as well. What was the approach with that? song?
What was it, Rue? I can't remember.
Well, you got a new toy, basically. You got a new keyboard with a drum machine in it, and it went from there.
Oh yeah, the beat had a beat that was like a sort of gallopy, like
Yeah, and then we chopped that up a lot, and then you started using this synth and started laying down a line. I came back, and you'd just been playing with it, and that's how we started. That's what was the.
It had one button on it that you can, so it does, you just start and then you press a button and it does a different randomized drum fill. It's like or a different one, and it's got like 3 choices. But like that was just the thing of, I guess we were trying to start use something else to start a song, or like come up with a different sound to inspire like a different moment. And then Rue came up with this the next song on the album after it, called Cocoon, used to be it was actually part of Love Is a Precious Thing.
Okay.
It's an instrumental sort of thing, and Rue came up with it by what was it? You just
reversed the verse keys, and it ended up sounding like strings, and then just got you to wail over it.
Yeah. When in doubt, just put everything in reverse, and it sounds.
Put it in reverse and chuck loads of reverb on Leo's voice, and you're onto a good one.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome to hear that there's a lot of experimentation going on. That's always cool to hear. And then obviously the concept of love, that line, "Love is a precious thing." Well, how did that kind of how did you pull that out of the ether?
I think it's just that feeling of, love is a very sort of delicate and beautiful and sort of dangerous thing, and I've always sort of been aware of that. When you fall in love with someone, there's this idea of like an element of intense heartbreak and pain that can come with love. And I think I've just been always very aware of that as you step into love, you're potentially stepping into something else as well. And it was just that was the sort of idea. But at its heart, it's very much it's just a romantic love song, but tinged with an element of danger or something. I don't know.
But is it fair to say that kind of your wife was somewhat of an inspiration or strength, and because a lot of that comes through on the record, that you have a great appreciation for your partner.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she'd be so embarrassed for me to be talking about her, but she puts up with me writing endlessly about her, and like I think it's probably exhausting, but she's very supportive and very sweet. But yeah, she's a massive inspiration, and she's given me so much in my life, and so many intense feelings and experiences, and it's hard not to write about that sometimes, because it's my everyday, the good and the bad stuff. She's actually a writer as well, so she's preparing to probably like destroy me in a book one day. Write this really nasty book about. No, I don't think she will, but no, it's definitely a big inspiration.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Now, to round off a little bit, with this album coming out, and I believe 2023, you did your biggest American tour as well. What are the ambitions for the band? And because you mentioned earlier, the number one thing is we need to satisfy each other and just be happy and have fun in what we do. But do you look outside of that as well, towards America, for instance?
What do you reckon, Rue?
Yeah, definitely. I think very much so. I mean, we want to keep on getting out there, writing more records, playing to more and more people, wherever they'll have us, really. It's kind of, there's not really it's not really an end line. It's just keep on going and keep bringing people together and entertaining and writing records, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's it really. Just like keep learning and like just getting better and everything Rue said, really. And yeah, hopefully it'll keep continuing.
Well, for somebody who's never been on stage as a performer, can you try to put into words what the magic is of performing live for people?
guess I suppose, I mean, it is as cheesy as people say, it is a bit of it, like it in some way is a bit like a sort of hit from a drug or something. You really do feel it's like intoxicating, because in equal measure it's like terrifying and exciting at the same time. And I think it's that thing of like the combination of like there's the element that could go wrong, you know, so you feel like you might mess up, you might forget lines, equipment might break, but then there's so much to gain in people's response and connecting with them. And it's, I mean, it feels like a sort of spiritual experience almost, being on stage and seeing people and feeling this sort of the connection of what you're putting out and then receiving it and then giving it back to you is like creates this intense sort of vibration, and like you almost do feel like you're floating when you're on stage, I think, unless it goes wrong, and then you want to run off stage.
Final question, and this is for both of you separately. What has been your most memorable moment on stage, and it can be good or bad?
Oof.
Oh man. All the bad ones definitely get just blocked out, and I could.
Well, I was thinking about that the other day, because usually they say, right, if you get 100 positive comments and one negative, you're focusing on the negative, right? Is that similar in playing live shows where it can go right 99 times, but the one time it doesn't, you kind of it gets in your head?
It used to be, for sure. I remember we'd come off stage in the earlier years, and you know, we like come off just like heads and hands, like, oh, I messed up a chord in this song. Now it's just like, it really does not matter.
Right.
You know, everyone makes mistakes in sport, any form of entertainment or just general life. Everyone's constantly making mistakes, so there's nothing to get hung up on.
To be honest, that the other night when we played, actually, we did this gig at Earth in Hackney last Friday, and there was a moment of the, just because it's fresh in my mind, we did the whole album the whole way through. And at the end of the album, before we went in to play some old songs, everyone gave us this sort of like standing ovation, and like people were very emotional in the crowd. And that was like, that made me well up. That I felt like that was some very special moment.
Yeah, that was a very special show. Actually, I'd put that as my most memorable, not just because it's the most recent, but actually it was a very special show.
Yeah.
That's very beautiful. Gentlemen, may I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thanks, man.
Pleasure, man. Thanks so much.